speaking to Sharif Abdel-Quddus last night. Special thanks to Nicole Salazar. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. We're broadcasting from the World People's Summit on Climate Change and Rights of Mother Earth here in the Bolivian town of Tiquipaya, just outside Cochabamba. Thousands of people are streaming to the soccer stadium for a major climate change rally that's taking place this morning. Part of this week's summit focuses on the controversial practice of geoengineering, the deliberate altering of the Earth to decrease the level of greenhouse gas emissions. Supporters of geoengineering have proposed radical ways to manipulate the planet, including creating artificial volcanoes to pollute the atmosphere with sulfur particles. Our next guest, Pat Mooney, heads the Etc. Group, a Canadian-based group that addresses the impact of new technologies on vulnerable communities. The group's launching an international campaign against geoengineering experiments. Pat Mooney is the author of several books on the politics of biotechnology and biodiversity. In 1985, he received the Right Livelihood Award from the Swedish Parliament. We welcome you to Democracy Now!
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks, Pat, for being here. You've come from Ottawa for this conference to talk about geoengineering. It may be the first time some people in this global audience of Democracy Now! Have even heard the term. What does it mean?
Well, it really is a massive manipulation of ecosystems of the planet. It's a major way of trying to intervene in climate change, to block sunlight or to sequester carbon dioxide in the ocean, to make a change in how the planet will function in response to climate change. I think it's a terribly dangerous idea. It's entirely a theoretical idea, and it's gaining currency, strangely enough, in countries like the United States and the United Kingdom.
What are the forces behind it?
Well, it's a great excuse. You don't have to do anything. If you can simply say to your populations that don't worry, folks, you can keep on driving your SUVs, you can keep on flying, we'll take care of this through a technological fix for you. So there's this magic bullet that will solve the problems and we can go back to business as usual.
Is it governments? Is it corporations?
Both governments and corporations. We're finding some very big players in it. Besides the UK and the US, we're seeing Richard Branson from the Virgin group of companies very enthusiastic about it, saying, well, we can keep on driving and flying now. We have Bill Gates investing in it, and as is Branson, and also actually patenting in it, looking at ways in which you can block things in the stratosphere on ocean surface.
Talk about some of the geoengineering projects.
Well, the one that's become most popular with the National Academy of Sciences in the United States and also with the Royal Society in the UK is this idea that you can throw sulfates into the stratosphere, blast them high into the stratosphere, where they'll coast around for about 2 years at a time and block the sunlight. It doesn't reduce greenhouse gases in any way whatsoever. It simply blocks and delays some of the effects of climate change for a period of years. The problem is, of course, that no one really knows how that's going to work, any better than anyone knows what's going to happen with the volcano that's erupting right now. This is just a gamble that maybe we can buy ourselves some time by doing this. We don't know what the impact would be for particularly tropical areas of the world, areas right around here. We know that probably monsoons would be set off course. We know there probably would be greater drought in Asia. There could be more famine in Africa. We're not quite sure what happened here in Latin America, but no one is quite sure.
How do you shoot sulfates into the atmosphere?
Long pipes from polluting areas, in fact, that could blast it through the troposphere into the stratosphere. There's other ideas of planes flying over that could blast it as well from the aircrafts, and not just through trails, but in a very deliberate sort of strategy. There are several possibilities. There's also ideas of where you could whiten clouds to reflect sunlight more by blasting salt spray, basically, from oceans into the clouds, and that would reflect more sunlight.
What about these artificial volcanoes?
Well, that is the idea of blasting sulfates into the sky. It really is mimicking a volcano. But volcanoes usually only affect the troposphere. This would be getting into the stratosphere. They do occasionally get into the stratosphere, and if that happens, of course, you get global cooling very quickly sometimes. All of these, again, are ideas which were thought and produced initially in the 1980s and 1990s. Everyone thought they were crazy. We abandoned them. Now they've come back since the failure of Copenhagen, and people are saying we have no choice. This is the plan B we have to try. And tragically, it's a bunch of rich guys in rich countries sitting around together saying, we can risk the planet. We can make the decision for everybody else. We can put our hand on the thermostat and decide for everybody else what has to be done.
Placing aluminum foil in the sky?
One of the ideas, yes, to reflect sunlight again. Nanoparticles, basically, of aluminum foil that would be up there that would drift around for, again, a few years at a time. The cost of all of this are $25 to $50 billion, perhaps, continually. But compared to some other costs, they may seem not to be too expensive. And the very attractive thing for the U.S. Congress, which is discussing this now, or the UK Parliament that's also discussing this now, the attractive thing is that they can have a coalition of the willing of their own. They don't need to have the United Nations to agree. They don't need to have a People's Summit agree to it. They can really decide themselves as a handful of countries that we'll do this for the planet.
What does it mean to fertilize the oceans?
There are areas of the ocean which are nutrient deficit in terms of iron. So they're saying that what they can do is they can take iron filings, nanoparticles of iron,